Talking with Sean Gallagher about Richtone, his manufacturing business from the 1990s, which was the first and only manufacturing company to replicate Joe's original wooden clawfoot reformer. I'm very curious, what is Richtone?
So Richtone, one of the things I started Richtone in 2008, and
Okay.
was it 2008? No,
No.
nine. I closed it in 2008. It's 1998.
Okay.
And one of the things that I was doing, before I lost the trademark, I was setting up to do a franchise. And I was trying to get, I worked with I worked with Kenny Endelman, for almost 2 years. And he just didn't really want to be limited. He wanted to be able to, do his patent so he could make his own versions and nobody else could copy it and do that
Okay.
whole thing, so. So before I sued him after he laughed at me, when I said we need to take care of this, and he kind of laughed at that, and I was like, well, that's it then, it's time,
Yeah.
and I tried Stott, their equipment fell apart, within a month or two of being in the studio, so that was
Okay.
no good, and Steve had made stuff, so I finally, and I was looking, and in Suffern, New York, there was a architectural wood shop that was for sale. I saw
Oh,
I
okay.
saw an ad in the New York Times, one of those little
Wow.
tiny ads. I was like, ooh, let me go check it out. So I went,
Okay.
and the guy had a full, wood shop, and he was
Fully
retired,
equipped
yeah,
shop.
fully equipped shop. He was retiring, so I bought it and took it over, and I still did some of the art. The guys that worked there still knew how to do the architectural, so they did that. And then I
Okay.
started making the equipment, and Romana was supporting it, until she left, and then she wasn't. And so what I did is I also had bought Joe's in '97. I bought Joe's property and had his
Yeah.
original equipment. So I wanted to make his original equipment the way, he did, as best as,
Okay.
because that's sort of what, I wanted to. It's always been about, reimagining and, well, not even reimagining, but reinforcing and redoing his dreams. Those are the things he
Right.
wanted to do.
And the
He was
equipment was part of it. Yeah.
right. That was part of it. And, and it was, if I was going to open and franchise and have studios, I wanted to have the same equipment, franchises, when you
Mm.
go, I was here and there was some people in the other room I'm at Dear Evan Hansen, and that, it's the understudies, it's the understudies week. So they're all celebrating,
Oh,
but they were
okay.
having a discussion about religion. And there was like, if you go to Czechoslovakia and you go to a Christian, a Roman Catholic mass,
Uh-huh.
will it be the same even though it's in a different language? And they're basically like, yeah, because, churches were like the first franchise, and then there was McDonald's,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And because,
Yeah.
no matter where you go in the world, you know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
You walk in the door and you're going to get a certain, now the quality, you may not like the
Consistency.
quality, but it has
Right.
a standard and a quality. And that's what I was trying to do with Joe's. I wanted to do the same thing. So I was
And you
looking
want to
to,
do the same with the apparatus.
right, and I
Okay.
wanted to have the same apparatus that he had, even though he got metal ones later. I was like, well, I have the wood. Let's reproduce that. So there could be,
Okay.
and if you look at one of the pictures that Elaine used, I'm pretty sure one of those had both the wood and the aluminum. I
Yeah.
had somebody to make me aluminum, so I was going to do both.
Okay.
Try to make both, but in Joe's, the way Joe made it,
Okay.
because I know Gratz has, they talk about their archival, and it's a mixture of all the things over the years. It's not what Joe first had, and I
Right.
wanted to have what Joe first had. So
Okay.
that's what I did, and I also, I reproduced, the high chair from his high chair. We measured everything and made, and made everything exactly,
I was,
exactly the
yeah.
same. It's never exactly, there's no
Right.
perfection in the world. There's
Yeah.
always a negative 2 or 3% on either end that can go.
Yeah.
Well, so but it's very close to the original, and we made jigs so that everything was cut the same way each time. So there was the Wonder chair from the blueprints, because, and
Okay.
then there was the high chair from his original, right? And then there
Okay.
was the reformer, the small barrel, the spine corrector from the blueprints. So I started, and I even had the spine corrector that opened up or slid out, kind of like he did.
Oh, a
I
little,
did,
like a mini mat on it?
yeah, little,
Yeah.
padding, so you could, the way Joe had his. So I did
Okay.
make, I was making all that stuff. I made the bench mat that he had in the studio. He had two. There's two
Oh,
versions. There was a real small one. There's a picture. I don't have it with me, but there was a picture, and I reproduced that.
okay.
What else did I do? I was, finger and toes and foot correctors. I sourced all that stuff out,
Okay.
and then, I did a bunch of different things to really, sell the equipment. And when Romana was with me, before she left in 2003, was doing okay. When she left, like now I could probably sell a lot, but back then nobody was interested.
Yeah.
So within a couple of years, it really got to the point where when the lease was up, I ended it and closed it because I was losing money
Oh,
because nobody was
okay.
really buying any of that stuff. So
Okay. Yeah.
that's
Did
that.
you have equipment left over? What happened to all that stuff?
Well, some of it, I sent Inelia, my partner in Brazil.
Uh-huh.
When we took Pilates down there, again, she was one of my partners. So I own 51% of that business that I have
Hmm.
with her. And one of the things I did, she came up and I said, if you want it, you can have it. She had to pay for the shipping to send it to Brazil, so she got one of
Right.
everything from that shop. Some
Mhm.
other people, and I gave stuff away, and people helped me do stuff, so I gave him some. Jose. What's Jose's last name? Can't
Hmm.
remember it right offhand. But
Okay.
Jose, he helped me with a lot of stuff, so I gave him some equipment. Different people, different things, and some of it, it went in the dumpster because I had no place to put it.
Well, yeah.
Now, but what can I do? I mean, it was, because I didn't make one
Yeah.
thing at a time. I made a bunch at a time. You saw that picture. I'd make,
Well, that was a question I had, was what was the process to actually build the equipment?
well, I mean, when it's wood, right? You have to, you buy the wood raw, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we have to cut it and shave it and shape it and, get it to size. And then,
Mm-hmm.
we have to put it all together, and I had guys that did that. I helped some, but
Well,
they
how
did most
many
of the work.
people were working there?
Just a couple, two or three,
Okay.
depending on,
Okay.
what it was. I wasn't huge, and I never got
Yeah.
huge. I mean,
Yeah.
and one of the things I did, so it's time to talk about this. One of the things that I did,
Ah,
right?
yes.
So that's the claw feet. And I had somebody carve me this from the
Okay.
original, right? This is from the original. You got a piece of wood like this. They carved it out for me. And
Uh-huh.
then there was a place in Queens that I took it to, and he had a machine, and you would put 20 pieces of this in the machine, and it would carve them out.
Wow.
So I would carve out, 20 at a time, and then I would make, that's 5 reformers. So I'd go and I'd make 5 reformers at a time.
Okay.
Or was it 4 reformers? 4 pieces times 20, yeah, five
Huh.
reformers. And then, then you would attach, the piece here and the piece here, as here's the foot, right? The foot
Right.
sits out like this, and you have one, this would be
That's
the
so
front,
cool.
and this would be the long piece.
Yeah.
And then, he also, his originally had the loop, the little, you know, there's like a piece cut out in the front. I
Yeah.
made those, but then I also made them without that because Romana wanted a jumping board. So I made Joe's original 40-inch, but I also made one that was longer because Romana wanted a jumping board, and you cannot jump on a 40-inch reformer. It's almost impossible. I mean, you go out 2 inches and that's
You
it.
you
Two or
mean
3 inches.
80-inch?
Yeah, I mean 80-inch. Yeah, 80-inch and
Okay.
89. I think it was like 89. So it's like you can only go
Okay.
out so far. So when I did that, that was what the deal was. So I made one little extra.
So how many different reformers did you make? Were
Well,
some just based on length?
well, there was two lengths. There was the one for the jumping board and Joe's original. But what I did
Okay.
is, I made it out of, maple usually, and there was
Okay.
different versions. And then what I did is the trim, the top trim and the bottom trim, I did
Uh-huh.
specialty woods like cherry and mahogany and so
Wow.
that it was nice colors and so you could do that. And I put little brass corners on the like there'd be a little brass.
Oh
I
my
should have got one
gosh.
a little brass corner in here. So it was all I made it a
Yeah.
little fancy.
Yeah.
There was a plaque, Richtone plaque
Okay.
that just like Joe did right on the front. What else
Okay.
did we do? Wheels were a little different, but they did the job. And what else? And
Rachel in Miami had asked about a square foot bar.
a square foot bar. What do you mean?
Yeah.
You
Were
mean
all the foot
square?
bars square? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Joe had a round one, but that was very difficult to make. So I made the foot bar like rocks
Okay.
because the other, Joe's was almost like bent, and
Yeah.
it was like 3 times as much money to have somebody bend it to make it right than it was to just
Yeah.
weld the square one. So I welded the
Yeah.
square one.
So you got to be
So,
practical.
right. I mean, there's, I did modify some things, but the frame, and again, the frame, I made a longer one, which wasn't what Joe did. Joe only had on his, guess what? There was no side wheels. So,
No
because
side
that
wheel.
means the carriage would have moved more. So, I did upgrade, like, so it wasn't
Yeah.
exact 100%, but it looked
Right.
very much like his, and I added the accents that he didn't do. I did different things, but, I try to do it. And then,
Okay.
again, the other apparatus, same, I basically, pretty much followed what he had.
Okay. Yeah.
So I had lots of different, and, I mean, and I had my catalog. I showed this last night, and there was stamina stuff, but there was also, there's a back page here, and it says Pilates brand TM classical equipment line, right? And so you had the Pilates Cadillac was $2,500. The Divana Reformer base model with raw claw feet in hardwood ash was $1,950. The Pilates Divana Reformer basic model with claw feet hardwood ash with cherry or mahogany trim was another $50, so it was $2,000. The Pilates aluminum reformer was $2,200. The Pilates classical ladder barrel was $675. The classic bench mat was $325. Pilates wonder chair was $500. The high chair was $1,150. And then there was accessories, Pilates, foot pads. I got the same foot pads that Joe did because I had the receipt, so I bought them from the same place.
Wow.
I had Joe's original springs, so I went and had them reproduced, so you could buy the springs. I had the metal bars with caps, leather handles, leather straps, arm springs, chair springs, and leg springs.
Okay.
So I sold all that, and they were, the springs were 12, 14, arm springs were 10 or 20 for a pair. The straps were 85, leather, and then the leather handles were 30 a pair. So, I mean, this was, 2000, so it's 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So prices have gone up, but I think I was competitive back then with everybody else.
Yeah.
At least I tried to be.
Yeah.
And so that was what I was, I had, and, what I was trying to do. And if you look at the picture, you can see the picture. There's the regular one, and then down in the corner, I had one.
Yeah.
When you can see that it had the cherry trim on the top and the bottom, so it was a little extra special.
Yeah. That's so neat, that attention to detail. Were there things that you learned about the original apparatus as you made the newer stuff?
Well, a couple things. One of the things, and I did make some modifications. The gearbox bars. Where they put the gear bar in for the gears. One of the things that I did is at the front. Like Rots put that little piece up there that stops the bar. Before it didn't have that. Well, he put that there because what I did is I had to get that piece recasted.
Okay.
So I had them add at the very end a little piece like that that would be that the bar would slip into to hold it in place.
Okay.
So I added that. I learned, again the side wheels. He didn't have side wheels. I added side wheels.
Right.
I did, one of the things that I did that that nobody has done yet. I think was another forward-thinking thing that I did is that I made it so that the shoulder blocks you could just unscrew and take off and send back because it was the quarter moon ones. Right?
Oh.
So I made it so that you could just order those and replace them instead and I would give a good deal.
Okay.
The vinyl on the carriage was snap-on. So if it got bad, you just pull the snaps off. And buy a new one and snap it back on. And you didn't have to sew it. You didn't have to staple it. You didn't have to do any of that stuff.
Okay.
So that was another thing that I did that nobody had done before.
Yeah.
So
I tried different colored vinyl.
Yeah, I had different colored vinyl. Not. I had 3 or 4 standard colors. I think it was 3. And then if you wanted something special, it was a special order, and you'd have to pay for that. Because I could order it, and then we just have it made. But I had a guy that would make those pads for me, and with the snaps because when you look at Joe's original, he had the little tacks, and I was like, well, let's put the snaps so it looks similar, but it's so much more functional because when it goes bad, you just pop it off and order a new one and put it on. You don't, because
Yeah.
and it was less expensive than, you know, sending that out to somebody to get it done. Usually, you know, I tried to
Yeah.
make sure it was affordable.
Yeah.
You know, it was always about trying to, you know, if you're going to, you know, do something, make it so that it makes it better.
Right.
Not, you know, and I didn't, and the things that I did to make it better, I didn't change, you know, because this is
Hmm.
what I always say, if, you know, you change the apparatus, you change the exercise.
Right.
Well, and when you know, if you change the relationship, so all the measurements were the same,
Right.
you know, and the only thing that was different was the bar, but, you know, that, you know, Joe started using that bar in the 60s, so he was okay with it,
Hmm.
right? You
Okay.
know, I mean, if you look at Chuck's pictures from the 60s, right, in 61, he had that bar on his new reformers. So that's what
Right.
he moved to. So I was okay with that. And
Okay.
he probably found out it was probably just as expensive for him as it was, you know, so that was probably one of the reasons why as well. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know for sure, but, you know, I mean, you know, so, but as far as, you know, carriage size, distance between you know, everything connected together, that was, you know,
Right.
pretty much
All
the
the
same as
dimensions.
Joe's, you know,
Yeah.
and that was
Okay.
different, a little bit different than Grod's, but it was, you know, I took it off of Joe's and tried to make it like Joe's.
Yeah.
So those
I
are, you know, those
I
are some
can't
of the things that
I
you know,
can't wait for us to be done talking. I want to go Google Richtone and see if there's any equipment out there somewhere.
mhm. And, you know, the other thing that, you know, I did was, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
you know, I had Joe's original springs for the
Right.
chair, for
I
the
think springs is
reformer.
another discussion. I think you have a whole
Yeah,
whole
well, but
topic on
yes,
the
there is.
springs,
But
right?
I'm going to talk about springs. But, you know, that was one of, you know,
Yeah.
you said, you know, was there things that you learned? You know,
Uh-huh.
I learned a lot about the springs, and we'll talk about that when we do the spring, you know, when we do our spring thing, you
Yeah.
know, the more in depth of, you know, but that was one of them.
Yeah.
And
Cool.
there's even more springs than that. You know, Joe, I mean, you know, if you, I mean, and I think you may remember that when we were at the Pillow, you know, I showed
Yeah.
that box, and there, you know, and the thing that, you know,
I know.
there's lots of variations that he had.
It was like a hardware store of equipment.
Well, he had the basic springs that he had on the apparatus, and that's the ones that
Mhm.
I used. But he had
Right.
other springs that, you know, and he probably used those for other reasons and other
Yeah.
purposes that, you know,
Yeah.
we may know or may not ever know. I don't know.
Yeah. He was
And
always tinkering. So,
right,
hey, okay.
yeah.
Um, so then Richtone closed down what year?
2008,
Okay.
you know, is when
So that's
I pretty much closed it down, and you know,
yeah.
I had stored everything there. I've lost some things, and I had some stuff damaged because one year there was, you know, one of these crazy floods that we have. It was like the
Oh,
last time we
yeah.
had the flood that we just had, and the
Yeah.
basement filled up with like 2 feet of water. And, you know, I had a lot of stuff on pallets and things like that, but it was so
It
much water
wasn't
that,
enough.
like
Oh,
a lot of
yeah.
the mats, the bench mats that I had were water damaged. So that's one of the reasons why I threw them out, because, you know, I
Okay.
kept them, you know, they were in storage. I just kept them, but I couldn't, you know, and, you know, trying to
Yeah.
sell something that was water damaged. I was like, yeah. And they
Yeah.
didn't have the vinyl on them yet. It was just the wood. You know, I had just wood
Okay.
pieces. So, you know,
Okay.
just it would depend on, you know, what it was. And then I had a lot of, you know, luckily most of the files that also got water damage were my PT files and not my Pilates files,
Okay.
because a
That's
lot of
good.
that was upstairs in the Pilates office. You know, I had, you know, when I closed after 9/11 and I closed the office in 890.
Uh-huh.
That's where Alyssa was, and that's where, you know, the lawyer was, and all that. And
Uh-huh.
I moved everything, the Pilates office and all the files and all that stuff there
Okay.
to Richtone. So Richtone had, there was an office
So it
just
was
for
a little
Pilates.
bit of storage too. Yeah.
Oh, well, you know,
Okay.
it was the basement was, you know, it was a 4,000 square foot shop, and there was just almost the same
Oh,
amount of space in the basement. So the basement
okay.
had a lot of stuff. So, but the problem was, you know, and that it only flooded once, but you only need to do it once, right? So that
Yeah.
was the problem. And yeah,
Okay.
so, and, you know, and Richtone was the name of the original business. So I didn't want to lose that. So it was
Oh,
Richtone Woodworking, and I changed the name to Richtone Design Group LLC.
okay.
And when after the, you know, losing the trademarks and all that other stuff, I closed Pilates Inc. and I
Mhm.
transferred all the assets, you know, the copyrights and the trade, you know, not to, you know, I have
Yeah.
other trademarks, and the copyrights I transferred to Richtone. So now Richtone is the owner of all the Sean Gallagher's Pilates Archives
Okay.
is the trademark name, but the
Right.
business that owns, that is Richtone.
So Richtone still exists.
Oh, yes, it does.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else tonight? This is really informative.
Oh, well, it's almost a half hour. Richtone was, I tried to, make equipment that, that would be in Joe's liking and and the way he wanted it, the way he originally did it. I thought that was something that would be good to do, even though he went to metal.
Would you ever do it again?
No.
No.
I'll consult if somebody wants to consult with me and work with me. I mean, I have, I have the original blueprints for all the garage stuff because, Romana got that, or Joe or whoever. But I have those, and I have Joe's originals, and somebody, and I'm already working with Russell to make, the spine corrector. We did the resistor, we did the small barrel, the bench mat.
Yeah.
We're talking about possibly redoing the junior reformer and maybe the the wonder chair. Those are possibilities. I don't know. We'll see.
Okay.
Whether that So I mean that, and again, I consult with him, and I charge a very, very small fee. Sure, much less than some of these other people that work with the bigger manufacturers get. So, but so it's not about the money. It's about the quality and the integrity of the work and making sure that.
Yep.
It lives up to, Joe's standards, or at least as close as possible to that, with his springs, with his measurements, so that you get what he wanted. It's like, here's the exercise, and the exercise was designed to be on that equipment, with those measurements. And that's what I'm trying to make sure that, and again, there's always a slight variation, but as close to that as possible. That's, that's the goal with the equipment.
Honor the integrity of it.
Yep. And that's sort of what I did with the home equipment with Stamina, and this is what I did with the studio equipment. I was trying to make sure that I could do the same things that Joe was doing. Joe made equipment and sold it. They made home equipment and they sold it. I was just trying to continue on in his footsteps as best as possible.
Like for a time that you were successful at that.
Well, I was trying, and then I lost the trademark. I mean, if I'd have won the trademark. I would have been able to franchise, and I would have been able to put all, put this equipment in all those studios, and every place you walked into that said Pilates would have had this equipment or the aluminum equipment and all the pictures all on the wall like Elaine's studio. And that's what you would get. You would get what like Elaine has, and that's sort of, that type of thing. That doesn't happen anymore.
Nope.
But hopefully I'm trying to make that happen again. So we'll see.
Let's end on a positive note.
That's always.
Yeah. Things are good.
It's always about the positives and not the negatives. And there's always a positive within the negative. So, I mean, this, to me, this whole thing has to, it's about bringing the positive, the positive and the information and let people understand, both, there's always two sides to every story. And, my feeling is it's, you hear one, you hear the other, and then you decide what makes the most sense and what seems, most correct with the facts and the documents and everything else that we have. That's it. That's what it's all about. Okay. We'll see you all tomorrow.
Yeah, for day 14. What is day 14? Oh, the second manual.
Yes. So that's going to be, that's going to be the second manual and talking about, Bob, when he edited it and helped make the second manual with Ramon and Shari. That's what we'll be talking about tomorrow.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right.
All right. Bye, everybody. Bye.